Good afternoon and welcome. Just a reminder, turn your cell phones to vibrate off or mute, and we'll start with an opening statement from Coach.
Again, like always, appreciate you guys coming out. Also appreciate the beautiful weather that we got today. Just quickly, players of the game from last week. On offense, we ended up going with our offensive line. Really all the guys that played. So Will Fries, Steven Gonzalez, Des Holmes, Michael Mennett, Mike Miranda, C.J. Thorpe, and Rasheed Walker. You know, Des Holmes being able to rotate in and play this year, I think that's been really valuable for us. And then obviously the same thing, being able to rotate C.J. Thorpe and Mike Miranda, who probably played his best game on Saturday. I think that's been valuable. Sitting at practice on Sunday, kind of looking at who are those next wave of offensive linemen that we'll be able to do that with for next year. Guys that may or may not be starters that be able to rotate in. I think that's been valuable for us this year. On defense, Micah Parsons, and on special teams, Jake Pinniger. So, really appreciative and proud of those guys. Getting into Ohio State, obviously, Ryan Day has done a great job. Excited about the matchup. We've obviously had great games. The last three matchups have been, decided by, you're really talking 5 points, 5 points. And then if you go all the way back to even 2014, the year that they won the national championship, our first year, took them to double overtime, if I remember correctly. So, we've had a lot of competition with these guys. We've played them probably as well as anybody over that period of time. But obviously, not good enough. We got to take the next step. So, but I've known Ryan for a long time. We've got a lot of respect for Ryan. I think he's doing a really good job. So, happy for him. Kevin Wilson, offensive coordinator, although Ryan Day calls the offense, Kevin has got the title, and obviously Kevin's got a tremendous amount of experience as a head coach in this conference, as an offensive coordinator in multiple different conferences, and very, very respected as a football guy. Scheme, they're predominantly 11 personnel team, probably about 75% of the time. They'll also mix in some 12 personnel, and then they get in multiple different formations to run, whether it's zone read or their stretch read, both weekend strong, and then some of the split flow zone. They thrive on explosive plays at the quarterback position, in the passing game. Obviously, the running back is having a tremendous year, at the tight ends as well, but they are explosive. As explosive as any offense in the country. Been impressed with their offensive tackle, Thayer Munford, who we recruited, is really playing well for them. Justin Fields, who we know extremely well, is doing great for them. His touchdown to interception ratio is really impressive, obviously. J.K. Dobbins, we recruited him as well. Very, very impressed with him and what he's been able to do this year and really over his career. And then their wide receiver number 17, Chris Olave, is doing a really good job as well. There's a number of guys, obviously, whenever you point out a few guys, there's other guys that you could mention too. And then on defense, they got co-coordinators in Greg Madison, who's been doing it for 43 years and been very successful both in the NFL and in college. And then Jeff Hafley as well, known Jeff, for a long time, and has had a really good career. And obviously those two guys have made a significant impact for them defensively this year. They're a base 4 down front. We know Coach Johnson does a great job with their D-line. And that continues to be the case this year. Their D-line sets the tone for their whole defense. Where they are different is they're predominantly a middle-of-the-field closed defense this year. They're going to have a safety in the middle of the field, almost all the time, which is somewhat unusual now in college football. But they're going to play some variations of one high, whether it's cover 3, whether it's cover 1. Whether it's pressure, whether it's man pressure, whether it's zone pressure. They do a really good job of disguising it. It all starts out kind of looking the same, and then they allow those guys to play fast. Obviously, Chase Young is back just in time for good old Penn State. And, obviously very impressed with him. I've known Chase know his uncle. I've known Chase for a long time. Obviously, is as impressive as a player on tape in the country. Before the games he missed, people were talking about him for the Heisman and things like that. So he jumps off the tape at you. And then we've been impressed with number 39, Malik Harrison, their linebacker, as well as their corner number 1, Jeffrey Aduka. But again, there's a bunch of guys that you could point out. So it's hard signaling out a few guys. And then on special teams, Matt Barnes has done a nice job. They've been good on special teams for a long way. He's kind of taken over. They continue to play a similar style on special teams. Matt was with Tyler Bowen at the University of Maryland a few years ago and is doing a good job. And guys that jump out to you is their kicker, number 95, Blake Hallbeal, if I'm saying his name correct. If not, I apologize. Running back number 30, Demario McCall, that they use in the return game. And then also wide receiver number 17 that we already talked about, Chris Olave, and then Seven Banks, number 12. Those are the guys that jump out to you on film. So obviously great challenge going on the road in a venue that holds over 100,000. We obviously know the home field advantage that comes from those type of environments. Probably the most talented roster we've watched on tape, definitely this year, maybe since we've been here. And it's going to be a great challenge. I know our guys are excited about it. Practice today will be important, and then I'll get a chance to visit with you guys tomorrow after practice as well, and have a better idea of how we've looked. But I know our guys are excited about it, and I know our coaching staff's excited about it, and we're going to have to go in and play well on the road against a really good ranked opponent.
Start with Rich Scarcella, Reading Eagle.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good, Rich. How are you?
I'm good. James, about an hour ago, Sean Clifford told us that he received death threats after the Minnesota game. And I was just wondering, did he tell you, were the authorities contacted, and what does that say about fans and social media in general?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into a whole lot of it, but yeah, I was involved in it. I would hope I'm involved in any of these types of things where our players need support, and then we make sure they get the right type of support. But yeah, I mean, I was trying to be, and my wife told me I wasn't so subtle after the game, but when I was thanking the positive, loyal fans, that's what I was trying to do a little bit. I don't know. I don't know where we are as a society. It's concerning. We're 9-1. We're ranked, in the top 10, I think. I've had a pretty good year based on most people's standards. And sometimes you go on social media and you wouldn't feel that way. And the fact that our players are having to deal with stuff like this. I remember, I think before I got here, we had a little bit of an issue with Sam Ficken. And I see it, it's not just our fan base, it's all over. I think a little bit of going to this playoff model that we're in now, I think has had an impact on it a little bit. I think the fact that everybody kind of has a voice and everybody has the ability to contact others, it's concerning. But I don't know if I necessarily have the answers, but it's concerning, and you see it everywhere. And we laugh about it, and not this incident, but I think the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and the next game at halftime they're getting booed. And we laugh about those types of things, but I don't know. I just, I don't know if I have an answer for it, but it's troubling. There's no doubt about it. It's troubling. I think it's concerning for all of us, and I think that's sometimes where, where I maybe get upset sometimes, and maybe I shouldn't, and ask you guys some questions. But that's kind of where these things are coming from. I know the power that you guys have, and I don't want you guys to take it the wrong way. I'm just saying that's kind of where we are right now. Things get extreme. So, you hate to see it, but the sad thing, it's a part of our reality of our society right now. You see that in a lot of areas, and the last thing I want to do is get into other things besides football right now. But you see a lot of things that are behaviors in our society now that we accept that I don't know why we're accepting. You see some things from a violence perspective. You see some things that people in positions of how they're conducting themselves. It's just a lot of things that we're accepting in our society that we would never have accepted before. The things that parents have to worry about kids going to school, elementary schools, and it's just concerning, So obviously football is just a very, very small piece, but I do think it's a microcosm of a lot of other issues that show up in our society, and I'm not sure why we accept it, or I'm not sure why we think it's okay, whether you've had 14 Budweisers or not. I don't see why it's okay or acceptable.
Derek LeVarse, Wilkes-Barre Times leader.
Hi, James. How are you today?
Hey, Derek.
James, how early in the recruiting process did Justin Fields come on your radar, and what were your first impressions of him from his film and then from meeting him in person?
Yeah, obviously we were involved with him early and, had a significant relationship for a long time. So, obviously very talented guy. In terms of you come up with your list of things that you're looking for in terms of, characteristics, height, weight, speed, intelligence, release, accuracy, touchdown to interception ratio, win-loss percentage, all the things we look at when we're evaluating and studying quarterbacks. Watching them in games, watching them in practice, watching them throw live. They checked a lot of boxes. And based on what I'm seeing on film right now, I think we were right. It's pretty good.
Mark Wogenrich, Allentown Morning Call.
Hi, James.
Hey, Mark.
Excuse me, sorry about that. What is your sense this week regarding KJ Hamler's availability for Saturday?
Yeah, like I said last week after the game, we're hopeful. Obviously, we won't know. There's medical policies and procedures that we go through, and we got to go through a series of steps and things like that. But we were hopeful after the game. I still remain hopeful, but those decisions, I don't make. I won't make them now, and I never have, since I've been at Penn State. So, we'll wait and see. But we were hopeful after the game. I still remain hopeful. But again, the medical professionals will make those decisions.
Frank Bodani, York Daily Record.
Hi, James. Good afternoon.
Hey, Frank. Good afternoon to you.
Yeah, thanks. Ohio State will be your third straight opponent that's exceptional at throwing the football. What do you see as maybe the biggest issue or struggle you guys have had with Minnesota and Indiana in terms of pass defense?
Yep. Yeah, I think to your first part of your statement there. Yeah, I think you look at our 4-game stretch or whatever it's been. I don't know if there's if anybody's looked at this, but I don't know if there's been another team in the country that's played a 4-game stretch like this. I think we've had the 4th toughest schedule in college football. So this is obviously another challenge, and a team that throws the ball extremely well. A couple things. Obviously, first of all, you got to give Minnesota and Indiana credit. Really good job at the quarterback position, really good job from a scheme perspective and from a talent perspective. Obviously, all those things will be heightened this week. There's no doubt about that. But also, we haven't helped ourselves. I mean, there's been some times where we've blown coverages. The reality is that happens with everybody. We've been unfortunate the times we've blown coverage. We've gotten burned. We've gotten caught for it. We have to eliminate those things as coaches. We got to eliminate those things as players. And you got to give those guys credit for being able to take advantage of it, when we did. Obviously, critical times magnifies it as well. But those things have showed up. There's no doubt about it. And it's a trickle-down effect. You may have a linebacker that misaligns, which affects the safety, which now affects the corner. One issue impacts the other, and vice versa. So, that's what this week of preparation is about. We're going to have to match their confidence on Saturday, and we're going to have to match their playmaking ability. That's going to be critical.
Joe Giuliano, Philadelphia Inquirer.
Hi, James.
Hey, Joe. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, thanks. And you?
Good. Yeah, really good.
Good. You've talked often about the importance of fundamentals and taking care of the little things. And I was just wondering how you feel that's gone this season, being 9-1. Do you feel like you're doing the little things better? And how important, obviously, is that on Saturday against a skilled team like Ohio State?
Yeah, I think overall, if you went from game one to this point, I think yes, we've done a good job of that. Obviously, there's been some points where it has jumped out in certain games, but again, I think if you look at it overall, good. I mean, you look at last game, we had one penalty in the game. And played pretty clean from an assignment standpoint, but we had a couple that were critical errors that jump out at you. So there's no doubt about it. But again, you can't allow one or two critical errors to taint you as a head coach in where we're really at. But there's no doubt about it. We got to fix those things. But yeah, I mean, we had one penalty in the game. Even that one is kind of an interesting call. What I like is each week I turn in the penalties, and more than anything, I want to make sure that I clearly understand the rules the way I understand them, so that I can have the discussions with the staff and make sure we're all on the same page on how the rules are enforced or interpreted, and then do the same thing with the players. So on that pass play, for you to get called for grounding, you have to be conserving time or conserving yardage. So if they feel like you threw it away because you were under duress, or were trying to conserve time, then it's a flag. It's a total judgment call. And I actually agreed with it during the game because there was no one there. Now, it was an option route. Sean was expecting a post. The receiver ran a corner. Where I disagree is I don't think he was under duress in the pocket. So I'm telling that story because I think that's an example of the discipline. But the discipline is also being in the gap you're supposed to be in the run game. Being in coverage where you're supposed to be if you're a half-field responsibility or whatever it may be, or man coverage on number 2 or number 3. It's making sure in the run game when we're going on a combination block that the entire O-line and tight ends is coordinated, so our double teams are going to the right people, so we don't have two different double teams going to the same linebacker and leave a linebacker unblocked. That's discipline as well, all those communication things that are going on. So I think overall good, but we've had one or two mistakes per game that we got to get cleaned up, and obviously the better opponent you play and the more talented they are and things like that, it magnifies. There's less room for those types of errors. So that's what this week needs to be about.
Mike Gross, Lancaster Newspapers.
Good afternoon, James.
Hey, Mike.
My colleagues have done an even better job than usual of asking the questions.
Took all your questions?
Yeah.
All right, it was good talking to you, Mike. I'll talk to you next week.
But I'll come up with something here. I noticed that Jan Johnson was not on one of the finalists for the walk-on player award, and earlier this week it was announced that there were a bunch of tight ends announced for that John Mackey award, and Freiermuth wasn't one of them. And I'm not suggesting that either of those things are particularly important, but is there a lack of individual recognition for this team for some reason? Do you sense that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to be the biased head coach at Penn State and try to look at it from a big picture perspective. I think, when I get calls about things like that, I'm quick to throw praise at other teams in our conference or other people that we played, and I'm not sure if everybody does that, but we do that. And I also try to look at our guys. I can't imagine that there's, a former walk-on in the country that has as interesting and as unique of a story as Jan Johnson and as successful as a story as Jan Johnson. I can't imagine that there's 8 tight ends in the country that people would choose ahead of Pat Freiermuth. Could there be a couple? Okay, I can live with that. But 8? No. And I love our guys, and I want them to get all the attention that they deserve. Obviously, our focus is on the team and Penn State football, but we are big believers in that, with team success comes individual recognition. I think those 2 guys, deserve it. And I actually think it not only does it hurt them, I think it hurts the awards to not have those guys included. I think they got great stories, and they've earned it. They've earned it. But again, that's coming from the biased head football coach at Penn State. But in my humble opinion, they both deserve to be a part of that conversation.
Donnie Collins, Scranton Times-Tribune.
Hi, James.
Hey, Donnie, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Good.
Ohio State has really moved Chase Young around when they've had him, played him at linebacker, played him at defensive end. How important is it to pay close attention to what he's doing? And at the same note, how difficult is that for a quarterback or an offensive line to pay a lot of attention to him, given how good everybody else they have is on defense?
Yeah, obviously, Chase is going to make plays, and that's going to happen. We need to limit the impact that he has in the game, and they're smart, because if you leave him at the same position the entire game, it allows you to have a plan and know where he's going to be with a lot more confidence. Where if you move him around, it makes it a little bit more challenging. But there's no doubt, on every play, we need to know where he's at and account for him. There's no doubt about it. So, we will definitely do that.
Corey Geiger, Altoona Mirror.
Hi, James. How are you?
Good, Corey. How are you?
James, you always seem to choose your words carefully when speaking to the media. After last year's loss to Ohio State, you used the elite word. And I'm just wondering if, by any chance, do you have any regrets about making that elite statement, given the undue amount of attention that single word has been focused on?
Would you guys prefer me to not be so strategic and calculated in what I say? Just come in and just talk, wing it? When you guys enjoy that? Yeah. Chris would not. Yeah, Chris would not. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. Well, I think first of all, there's a fine line. There's nothing. I think you guys have gotten to know my personality over years. I think, and Chris tells me all the time I need to be more concise with my answers. But my natural thing is to come in and talk. I'm a relationship person. I'm a person that would rather over-communicate than under-communicate. Ask Scott and Sandy. That's kind of how I'm wired. So I would prefer to do that. But it's not the wise thing to do, as Chris nods her head again. So what I said after that game, I can make arguments both ways. I could make arguments both ways that I'm comfortable and good with what I said. But I could also make the argument there's things that are probably appropriate for me to say in the locker room and behind closed doors that's not appropriate to you guys in the media, because how things can go. It can blow up into something more than what you anticipated it being. But I can make arguments both ways. I don't wake up regretting that. But again, I could probably be a little bit more strategic, which you guys don't want me to be. But probably makes sense. But again, I think the thing I would say is, and this is something I believe very strongly, that we have very high standards and expectations at Penn State, and I think that's a great thing. I think that's a great thing. That's why I came here. That's why recruits come here. That's why we fill up a stadium of 107,000 fans the way we do, where most people across the country, their attendance is going down and ours is going up because people care. So I think that's great. Have I also told you that I look around the country and programs that have not been through anywhere near the adversity that we've been through and are having nowhere near the success that we're having, and it doesn't always necessarily feel like that, or the narrative is not that for whatever reason. I'm not sure why, but all the data backs it up. All the data backs it up. So, yeah, I think it's a fine line. But as I've stated before, I'm very proud. I'm not satisfied whatsoever, and trust me, I know our fans aren't either. But I think if everybody would take a deep breath and look at the big picture, everybody should be walking around that's associated with Penn State, the university, the athletic department, the community, and football, and be very, very proud of what our guys do off the field, what our guys do on the field, and maybe most importantly, what they do in the classroom. Should be very proud, because it's very difficult. And just look around. It's very difficult to be successful in all of those areas at the level that we've been.
We'll open up to questions here in the room. Raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you.
Hey, James, how are you today?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great. I wonder how important it is to have two left tackles that you're very comfortable playing, going against the kind of pass rush you're going to see. And do you go into a game thinking you're going to play one guy X amount of snaps and the other an X amount of snaps, or is that kind of a feel thing as the game goes along?
Yeah, so I would actually say we have three. I think, Will Fries, who we think is playing at a really high level right now. We think we have three guys that could do it. But yeah, I think it helps. We typically have a plan going in. It hasn't changed a whole lot at the guard position. It hasn't changed a whole lot at the tackle position, where we want to make sure we get Dez at least a series a half. There's that fine line that you want to make sure those five guys build enough chemistry working together, because they're not five independent contractors. They're one unit that needs to work together and be on the same page. But also Dez has deserved the chance to play, and it also keeps those guys fresh. So I think it's a good mix. Obviously, just like at the running back position, if someone is hot, we have the ability to stick with them. But our rotation on the O-line has been pretty consistent all year long.
Hey, James, how you doing today?
Good, how are you?
Good. You may have already sort of answered this, but when you're talking about the coverage and some of the breakdowns you've had recently, when you're reviewing the film, how do you differentiate between a trend or an individual isolated mistake that somebody might have made on the play? You talk about the cascade of things that happen when someone makes a mistake. How do you differentiate between the two, and then how do you address if it is a trend?
I think it's the point that you're making. Is it a trend? And a trend is the same mistake showing up again and again, and not a completed pass. This has been completed because this coverage or this player blew the coverage. What I try to get everybody to understand from my perspective is, it's like, okay, you got a go ball, and the ball drops right over his shoulder on the outside part of his body, away from the defensive back, and we had tight coverage, and we actually are holding the guy's inside hand, and he catches it. You live with that. You shouldn't overreact to that. You shouldn't freak out. We had great coverage. Our guys on scholarship, their guys on scholarship. The quarterback made a big-time throw, and the guy made a big-time catch. And we were squeezing them on the sideline. you live with that. The stuff you can't live with is a blown coverage from an assignment standpoint, or not using the right fundamental or technique, and because we didn't, we get burned for it. And that keeps showing up after we correct it. Where if it's a corner one play who makes a mistake and a safety the next play who makes a mistake in terms of blowing a coverage or a technique and fundamental, and it's different guys, and don't take this the wrong way, it's still got to get fixed. I'm not saying that, but that's the difference between a trend and a good player making a play or different players getting beat and good opponents taking advantage of it. And that's, to me, the difference in the point you're making. Is this a trend when we go back and look at it? I wouldn't necessarily say that's the case. We've made some mistakes that we can't make, and we've played good enough opponents that they've taken advantage of it.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
James, I'm wondering, do you think the type of athlete that you guys are able to recruit now has shifted or changed over time, given your success on the field coupled with what Dwight has been able to do?
Yeah, I think yes. For a lot of reasons, for just how the narrative has changed from when I first got here to now. That's had an impact. Going from, I think, when I got the job, we were averaging like 95,000 or 94,000 fans at games to 106,000. That's had a factor in it. The success that we've had on the field is factored into it. All those things, facilities, there's so many things that factor into it. I will say this, I think we've always, and I've said this before, I think we've always had good players. But now we're getting to the point where we have more depth, very similar to what we're talking about at running back right now. I mean, I would come in here every week and you guys would be asking me about Noah Cain, like Noah Cain. Oh, trust me, it's coming. No Cain. But I think what we've also shown this year is when you get in a situation where Noah may not be 100% for whatever reason, you have a lot of confidence in the guys behind. Here's Journey Brown now, I think that's rushed for 100 yards, multiple games in a row, and Ricky Slade's doing some really good things, especially in the passing game, and Devin Ford, and so on and so forth. So I think that's where things have probably changed, is the depth that we're starting to create. Where I think, the next step for us is, there's still some probably dips where some positions don't have the depth that is needed, where there's less of those. But when we first got here, we had good players. We just did not have the depth. And right now, we have more of it, but we need it more consistently across the board.
Hey, James. I was wondering how you would assess Clifford's handling of his emotions early in games over the past couple of weeks, and how there's an extra emphasis on that this week with the tough environment and the fact that he's playing at home in his home state for the first time.
Yeah, I think that's evolving. When you're a first-time starter, that's very different than being a returning starter or a 3-year starter or whatever it may be. It is, and I think he's kind of gone on this journey where finding the sweet spot of what's right for him. Some guys need to be really emotional and play with that edge and that chip. Other guys are going to be calm, cool, and collected, and other guys are going to be there in between, and that's different for everybody. And I think Sean's been on that journey this year, finding that sweet spot for himself. This week and the emotions, I don't see it a whole lot different. I do think him going on the road to Iowa and having success helps him. I think going on the road to Minnesota and not having success, handled the right way, helps him. And then the most important thing is, he played in a state championship game in that stadium. So that there's nothing that gets you more prepared. It's going to be a very similar environment to that, right? No. Yeah, for me to sit here and say I'm going to be able to prepare Sean for, what it's going to be like exactly, no, but we're going to do everything in our power to get him ready for what it's going to be like. But I do think the Iowa, the Minnesota helps. But again, 102,000 is a little bit different.
Since you raised Kane,
Hi, Neil.
Hi, James. You were forthcoming about Hamler. Is there optimistic about Kane this week?
Yeah, I actually think we could have. I think I said this to you guys. I think we could have played him last week, but it just didn't make sense based on the health that we have with those other three guys. Obviously, every week that goes by that he doesn't play, the likelihood and the chances of him being closer to 100%, happen. So yeah, we're hopeful. We were hopeful last week, but when I talked to you guys like on a Tuesday and I haven't really seen him practice, we kind of see how it goes. And again, by the end of the week, again, it just didn't make sense based on what we saw. And also, I think it also factors in where I'm trying to explain to you guys as well is if Noah Kane was a returning starter in year 3, you may let him go without practicing all week because of the amount of football he's played. But at this point, I don't know if you would necessarily do that. So my point is my answer may be the same, but based on a young man's experience, that could impact it too. Does that make sense?
Also, I was curious, have you seen enough of a pattern with the noon start these last couple and also Pitt? Obviously, this is a big window. Anything to alter the approach or enough to raise a concern that you guys haven't been what you want to be during these noon starts these last couple weeks?
Again, it's a question that somewhat is a statement, but we've been pretty good. I think we've been pretty good, but we're not adjusting anything. There's no concern. We've played really good opponents, and we've found a way to win 9 out of the 10. We want to win them all. I get it, but nothing that we're changing. If that's what you're saying, I'm.
Question.
Okay. Well,
just for the record, there was a question mark at the end of it.
Yeah, all of them are technically questions. I mean, you can put a question mark, or you can kind of at the end of it kind of go up with make it a question. But I wouldn't necessarily say that. No, again, to sit here and say that changes need to be made, based on the success that we've had this year, I don't know if I necessarily feel the way you do. We look at everything, night games, afternoon games, mid-afternoon games, and make adjustments when we think it is necessary. I think one of the biggest things that we have to make sure that we're doing is how do we get our guys prepared the best to play the games that we've played week in and week out, opponent after opponent. And again, we've played as tough of a stretch as anybody in the country. So that's the most important thing, to me, not necessarily the time of the game. And the last thing I want to say too is, what I think the first time we played one of these games, and I said something in here, and you guys all knew I was kidding when I said about the 12 o'clock game, and they just put the quote out with anybody watching it, like people just went berserk, like about the 12 o'clock game, when everybody in this room clearly knew I was joking, but then the quote goes out in black and white, and no one watches the press conference. Then it's interpreted very differently. Like, I can't believe it. Why would you say that?
Hey, James.
Hey, Mike.
Have you seen enough from Ryan Day to see if there's a significant difference the way he coaches than Urban?
Yeah. I think the sample size at this point is still relatively small. But obviously, you look at Ryan's career, I don't want to sit here and say like I know, but if I had to guess from my perspective, the two biggest influences probably in his career is Chip Kelly and probably Urban. And Ryan had a lot of success before coming to Ohio State, and then obviously, he's fortunate to take over a really good program at a point in time where it was healthy and thriving. So why would you change a whole lot? Specifically when his handprints were already all over the offense. So I think the biggest change is probably the personnel change, staff changes that he made, when he got the job. They're probably the most different on the defensive side of the ball in terms of scheme. But besides that, I think special teams are very similar. The offense is obviously the same because he was running it the last couple of years, so the defense is different. How they recruit, where they were as a program, all those types of things. I think it's similar, and why wouldn't it be? Obviously, because he took over a program that was already in a pretty strong position. So you see his fingerprints on the program. There's no doubt about it. But the biggest change I'd say is on the defensive side of the ball.
Hey, James, how are you?
Good, Tyler, how are you?
Good. Speaking with Micah post-game on Saturday, he was kind of looking back a little bit at the development of that 18 class and him and Fields spending time in the same group and some of the what-ifs that you can think about as a head coach who was so day-by-day detailed in that process. And is it ever hard to shake off some of those years down the road when the kid's on the opposing sideline and he's obviously a problem as a matchup? Is it hard to shake some of those feelings from the recruiting process?
Yeah. Yeah, the losses on the field are hard to shake. The losses in recruiting are hard to shake because you put so much into them. There's no doubt about it, and that's where my conversations with the administration about competing for everything, because when you lose a recruit, you want to know why. And when you find out what those whys are, you want to try to eliminate them as much as you possibly can. When you have losses on the field, you're trying to figure out what those whys are, and that's what you work so hard during the week to try to eliminate those things. But it's compete. It's competing year-round. I think that's where the football thing is maybe different. Is the level of competition year-round for everything at the level of where we're at, and the expectations and standards are where we're at. You have to be willing to compete in every single area and every single thing. So yeah, it definitely bothers you. And your point is a good one. It's magnified when you lose someone and they go to somewhere else in the conference, and now you have to compete against that guy for 3 or 4 years. So yeah, I guess it's really no different than if he goes anywhere else, but it's in your face. It's more obvious.
How's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
No complaints. How does the anatomy of a game plan change when you're playing a team that you said might be the most talented roster you've had versus some team that falls on the other end of that scale?
Yep. So, again, trying to be strategic here, because I don't want to say anything that gives things away to what we're going to be doing on Saturday, if that makes sense. But basically, you look at the things that they do well, and one of two things: how do you limit, the impact of what they do well, whether it's personnel or scheme, but also what do they do well that also could put them in jeopardy or at risk, and how can you use that against them, whether someone's overly aggressive, whether someone is not aggressive enough. You're looking at those things, and the combination of those things that you see on film from them, and then knowing who you are and what you're capable of taking advantage of, that's where those things factor. I think one of the worst things that people do is they play a really talented team, a really talented roster, and you play conservatively. And you can't do that. I mean, we're going to have to go there. We're going to have to match their confidence, and we're going to have to match their playmaking. And matching their playmaking isn't just taking shots down the field and things like that. It's you're carrying the ball as a runner, as a running back, or as a receiver, and they come up to make a tackle, and they've made that tackle in the 9 or 10 previous games, and you break that tackle and go for 40. That sends a message. You've made that tackle for 10 straight weeks. You didn't make that tackle this week. You got to be able to match those things. They bring a pressure that they've had a lot of success getting home on. We're able to slide and pick it up and now take advantage of when they blitz, they vacated a zone or left someone one-on-one, and then you got to capitalize on it. Same thing on defense. For us to sit here and expect that Ohio State isn't going to make plays on Saturday, they're going to. So don't be shocked by that. And I'm not just talking to you guys. I'm talking to, like, my team. That's going to be my message to the team. Like, they're going to make plays. We got to match them, and it needs to be one of those type of games, like a heavyweight fight. That guy delivers a blow and you counter. And that's what it's gonna need to be.
Time for one more.
James, on the depth chart, Justin Shorter moved around a little bit on your depth chart. What's maybe behind that, or is it just trying to maybe get him involved more in the flow of the game, or is it just on there?
No, I think what I try to do is, again, on Tuesdays, sometimes we put a depth chart out, and it's early in the week. And, we want to go through that week and see how things play out and who we feel like gives us the best chance to be successful and where they are on the depth chart in terms of first team, second team, third team, but also the position that they're at. And a lot of times I don't know that by Tuesday. So with that, I think that's exactly how we ended up playing it last week. So that's typically what I'll try to do is I'll try to come in and say, okay, this is actually how it was last week. And we're anticipating doing that again, but again, the week will play out, and come Saturday, we'll have those discussions on Friday, and then finalize them on Saturday, and then go out and do it.
Thank you, Coach.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
We'll be joined by Pat Freiermuth momentarily. We're now joined by tight end Pat Freiermuth. Raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you.
Hey, Pat, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
You told us last week that the top tight end award was something that was important to you, and you knew this was coming. You weren't one of the 8 semifinalists. Any reaction to that? We've heard from Franklin, we've heard from Clifford. We'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I thought that I did everything I could this year so far up to this point to prove that I'm one of the best tight ends in the country. But an award doesn't define who I am, define me as a player. I think I had a really good season so far, and it is what it is, and I can't control that now. So, my focus right now is on Ohio State and anything we can do to beat them and the season moving forward.
You gained motivation from the thought of the award leading up to it. Is there any different kind of motivation moving ahead now?
Yeah, I'm obviously still motivated to win it. If it's obviously not going to be this year, then it's going to be next year or the year after that. But, yeah, if anything, it's just going to fuel me to play harder and play faster and do what I need to do.
How you doing, Pat?
Good, how are you?
Good. James was saying before that this game's going to be a heavyweight fight, where one guy throws a big blow and the other counters, and you guys are going to have, both teams are going to make plays. Does that change or impact your mentality at all entering the game, or?
No. Obviously, Ohio State's a great team. They have athletes everywhere, and we have athletes everywhere too. So I agree with what Coach said. There's going to be some big plays on both sides of the ball made. So we just got to roll with the punches and hopefully at the end of the day come out on top.
You mentioned your future and that award. You've kind of garnered some interest because you had that interesting path here with the 5 years. So are you planning on staying here? Is that even an option that you could petition?
Yeah, I haven't really thought about it, to be honest. I haven't really talked about my parents or the coaching staff or anything about it. Something I would assume I'd probably think about after the season. But right now I'm focused on Ohio State and the season moving forward.
And when you look at that Ohio State defense, what's maybe impressed you about them? What's maybe stood out about them?
Yeah, there's athletes everywhere on the field on that defense. Whenever they sub, whenever they bring in new personnel, they don't skip a beat. They're fast, they're explosive, and they definitely got some strength everywhere on the field. Obviously, Chase Young, great player, and Kuda, their corner is really impressive too, and their linebackers are too. So I mean, we're gonna have our hands full, but we got athletes and playmakers too all over the field. So hopefully, we come and do what we need to do.
Pat, you shared a recruiting class with Justin Fields for about 6 months. We spoke back then how excited you were to play with him down the road. Now he's on the opposite sideline. Is it strange to look back and how recruiting works out and how college football is just such a big spectating thing that now in the game of the year right now, he's on the opposite sidelines trying to beat you guys?
Yeah, it's definitely weird. I remember I was with Zach and Ty Burton, and we picked him up at the airport for the spring game when he was here, I think. Obviously, he was planning on coming to Penn State, but he chose to go to Ohio State or Georgia. But now he's at Ohio State, and it's definitely weird playing against him, thinking he was going to be part of this team. But in the end, he had to do what's best for him. And obviously, I mean, I haven't talked to him since, but I support his decision, and obviously he's having a great career so far.
Do you remember if there was a bit of a scramble in the recruiting class from the point where Justin decommitted to the point where Will came to the camp and got the offer and committed? Was it kind of a gray area period for you guys, wondering who was going to take on that role in the recruiting class?
To be honest, I don't really remember. But I mean, to be honest, I don't really remember. It's a long time ago.
This might be asking the same question twice, so please don't hurt me. Regardless of whatever you're doing in your future, do you know if you're draft eligible next year? Because they said on the broadcast a few times that they were under the impression that you were. Regardless of what your plan is, do you have a baseline understanding of where you are on that?
Yeah, I know I am. But like I said before, I haven't really thought about it at all. I haven't talked to my parents or the coaching staff or anything like that. So, again, I'm not focused on that, but I do know that I am.
And how important is it to have for how well you played against Ohio State last year, to kind of have a performance like that against a team like that? How much does that help? Not going into this weekend, because obviously you played a lot of football, but early in your career to kind of have one of those confidence booster games.
Yeah, Ohio State is probably one of the best programs, if not one of the best in the country. So obviously having that be my first start in the whiteout and having a good game like I did, it definitely helped my confidence. But that was last year, and hopefully, I mean, I've grown as a player, and same as this team. So hopefully this year I can come out and the team can play well, and I can play well, and see where that ends up.
How much pride do you take in your blocking? You've talked a lot about how you that was something you picked up in high school. And I don't know if you can judge this, but do you think that's something that's kind of overlooked when people are judging tight ends at this point?
Yeah, obviously I take great pride in my blocking, like I've said a lot of times. I think I've done a great job this year at the point of attack and moving dudes off the line of scrimmage to make holes for the running backs and Cliff. So, I mean, yeah, I do think it's an overlooked part of the tight end. Obviously, tight ends that can make play in the passing game and everything, obviously that's looked at a bunch. But I do think, I mean, when you look at NFL tight ends, like they are asked to block like most of the time too. So I think I take great pride in that and continue to do what I'm going to do in the run game.
Can you speak to what Nick Bauer's increased opportunity has added to the offense and how much pride you guys had in the late game drive the other day, which was, pretty special?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely a special drive to be a part of. I mean, it was 9 minutes and it was a lot of split flow, so it was definitely a lot of big blocks. But, I mean, me and Nick take great pride in that. It's obviously great having two tight ends to rely on in the run game and the pass game. Nick's done a great job in both so far this season, and it's great to be on the field with one of my good friends, and we compete with each other in practice every single day to get better, and we're not afraid to let each other know if we're lacking one day in practice or if we're lacking on footwork one day in blocking. So it's awesome to be able to see him on the field and do his thing, and I'm happy with everything he's done so far, and he's going to expect to have a big game just like I am against Ohio State.
Might have four. Pat, your quarterback said this morning that he had received death threats at some point this season. I mean, were you aware when it happened? Did you have to talk to him at all? Were you surprised by it?
Yeah, I was aware when it happened. He talked to me about it for a little bit. But, I mean, at the end of the day, you hate to see it. But, I mean, it is what it is. Me and him obviously talked about it, but, yeah, I don't think it affected him too much. I think he just kind of went off social media and didn't let it affect him. But, I mean, it's kind of cruel for people to do that when we're trying to put on for the university and make Penn State look good. It's not like we're going to go out it's not like we're trying to lose, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's definitely upset, and when fans do that, it definitely hurts, but, I mean, we kind of signed up for it, but it is what it is.
Anything else for Pat?
Sean told us on Saturday afternoon that he anticipated it was going to be the best week of preparation for this group.
Yep.
I know you still have to hit the practice field, but through 48 hours or so, are you seeing that executed right now?
Yeah, I'm in the building yesterday. Me specifically, I was in there for like 6 hours watching film. I watched like 3 games, 4 games, and specific cut-ups of certain players on the defense. And I think when I was in there, there was a lot of dudes watching film, and that was even scout team players watching film on their offense or their defense to give us the best looks and pick up tendencies, what they do. And I think that's been all year, to be honest. I think Justin Neff, you guys have seen me talk about him a lot, and even Vasey and Chismar, they do a great job watching film on the opposing team's defense so they can give us the best looks and play who they're representing in practice and how they can play their tendencies. So it's just awesome to have that buy-in from everyone knowing their role. So I think it is like another week, another game. Just we're not going to do different things because it's Ohio State week. We're going to stay consistent and stick to our process. But I do think the whole season guys have taken a lot of pride in watching film and implementing that on scout teams and our preparation.
Based on your weekly preparation, maybe even including last year, has an opposing defender jumped off the tape like Chase Young does when you get ready for Ohio State? And if so, what does he do that makes him such a dynamic threat to deal with?
Yeah, I probably haven't seen, watching film, another dude like Chase. Obviously, Chase Winovich maybe. But Chase Young is a great player. He just jumps out. He's just so physical. He's just physically dominant. He just rushes the passer really well, and he stops the run really well, and he's just an athlete out there. They like to move him around a little bit and kind of put him in mismatches. But we just got to be on our A game, and we have to identify him wherever he is on the field, just so he can't wreck our game plan.
We asked Coach Franklin about his great to elite comment from last year. What do you remember about hearing that? How did you take that message last year? Because the clip kind of went viral in a hurry.
Yeah, last year, I mean, personally, I completely agree with him. We weren't up to that game. We were letting things slide. We weren't doing things how we do things now. And I do think that ever since that comment or whatever it was when he made it, I think the team and the whole program really took great pride in that. And that's when the 1-0 mentality kind of started building in and people started buying into it. And you could see that in the offseason. So, I mean, me personally, I think I took that comment that he made with great pride and wanted to bring this program back to its elite status.
All right. Thank you, Pat. We'll be joined by Shaka Toney momentarily.
Yep. Thank you.
Now joined by defensive end Shaka Toney. Raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you.
Shaka, just curious, first of all, when you sat down and you watched some initial film of Ohio State, what were your first impressions?
Physicality, speed, real good understanding of their scheme. They do what they do, and they do it very well. Great athletes, well coached, well disciplined.
Overall, can you just evaluate the pass rush for us? I mean, you guys are 11th in the nation, but more than half of those sacks have come against Purdue and Idaho. So what is the dynamic there, and how do you feel like you guys have been progressing in the week since?
I'm not really sure I'm understanding what you're asking.
I'm just curious, are there any concerns with this pass rush? Can you evaluate, how that's progressed as the season's gone on? Because you guys do have a lot of sacks, but it's kind of top-heavy against those two teams.
If you watch the film, you see a lot of people, they're getting rid of the ball fast. A lot of mass protection. Their teams aren't letting us just rush. me, the other defensive ends, the rest of the D-line, they're not just letting us tee off on their quarterback. You know, they're coming into the game with a plan, a scheme, and things like that. I could tell you firsthand, a lot of the O-linemen that I have watched on film, I'll come into the game and get something entirely different from their sets to the timing of their punching of their hands. So, you know, things kind of spring up on us, and we're making plays as we make them, and we're just gonna keep working hard. You know, our group, we done a lot of things well. We got a lot of things to work on, but we're gonna keep getting better.
In the back here, from your perspective, what excites you about this week's matchup, and what are the challenges you see?
Just another opportunity to play football. I know a lot of people that don't make it to this level. My friends, I have friends that have passed away, friends that have been murdered and things like that, and I'm just grateful for another opportunity to play again. And what was the second part of that question?
What challenges do you see?
It's always a challenge to go on the road and win games. Winning isn't easy. If it is, everybody would do it. You know, you got to come in and be prepared. You got to work hard throughout the week. Got to do whatever you have to do to make sure that you can be 1-0 on Saturday.
Hey, Shaka, how are you?
I'm good.
Good. And preparing for this game, how unique of a talent is Justin Fields, what you're contending with him at quarterback? And did you get to know him or meet him at all when he was a recruit committed to Penn State?
Nah, I didn't have a chance to know Justin Fields. Other guys that are in his age range, as far as like his class, he told me he's a really good guy. He didn't come here. You know, he made a decision for himself, and I leave no player at fault for that. You know, every program is different, and you need to find the best fit for you. So, you know, can't wait to meet him. Can't wait to shake his hand. You know, I heard he's a pretty swell guy. I feel real bad for him for what he went through at Georgia. If that was true, you know, nobody deserves to go through that.
How do you deal with him as a player? I know you said shake his hand. I'm sure you want to also hit him a bit. How do you kind of counter a player who has the abilities to do so much, you know, without really help?
You know, he's special, of course, but you know, we don't single out any other player more than anybody else as far as the D-line does. Most quarterbacks you're going to play in the Big Ten are going to be good or great or do something well. You just got to approach him the right way. You can't let him get out the pocket and things like that. You know, you have to do your job as a defensive end. He makes plays with his arm and his legs, so we have to do whatever we have to do, you know, to try to keep him in check.
And if I could ask about one of your offensive teammates, Pat Freiermuth was not named a semifinalist for National Tight End of the Year. 8 semifinalists named yesterday. He was not on the list. Any reaction to the fact that he's not there?
A reaction from me or just, you know, I think individual awards are always nice, but I'm pretty sure if we go 1-0 this week, he's going to forget all about that awards list. You know, those things, they can be biased. Sometimes people can get overlooked. It doesn't always tell the full story. Pat is hardworking, and if he keeps doing what he's doing, he's in the NFL, a first-round guy. He's not going to think about anything, about awards list that he missed out on. He's going to think about the times that he had here, just like the rest of us. You know, individual accolades are okay, but championships and just enjoying your time with your brothers mean all the world more to you.
Do you look forward to games that are going to be harder?
I don't look at no game, no bigger or no smaller than any other. You know, you see upsets, you see people get blown out, you see anything can happen in college football. So if you think one team is so much better than the other, you know, it's just a bad approach. You know, we say 1-0 because that truly means something to us. Anybody can get beat. It doesn't matter how much talent you have or what you're doing. Every dog has his day, and everybody has a great approach to the game. You know, you have to treat everybody with the same amount of respect.
How you doing, Shaka? Over here, sorry. How you doing, Shaka?
How you doing? I'm good.
Good. I just wanted to ask, James was saying during his press conference that this is going to be a heavyweight fight. You know, one team is going to throw a big blow and the other one's going to counter. Do you have any memories of any games during your college, high school, whatever career of, you know, a true heavyweight fight where you're just going back and forth with another team?
First game come to mind is my city championship against Archbishop Wood my senior year. Game came down to the wire. Anthony Russo, shout out Russo. That's one of my Philly guys. You know, I know that he's doing well at Temple. He threw a game-winning pick, game-sealing pick, end of the game. I myself was in his face. He threw it to my running back / linebacker. I think about the Iowa game when we went to Iowa the first time. That was just huge. And I was a freshman at that time. I probably played 4, maybe 5 snaps, but I just remember the emotion from it. The Big Ten championship that we won, the Rose Bowl, you know, all those games. And football truly is a momentum sport. And if you don't react to the momentum the right way, you can get drowned out. You know, people can get down in a hole and just let the game go, and it's like, we'll play next week. But then you have a team like we just watched Oklahoma come back against Baylor. You know, you just got to keep fighting. You know, if the momentum isn't swinging your way, like you said, you got to counter back, throw a hook, jab, duck, do something, but make sure that you don't ever stop fighting.
Hey, Shaka. Coach Franklin mentioned earlier his great to elite comment from last year, and obviously when he said it, it went viral. What do you remember about the comment and kind of everything he said that night about how you guys needed to take that next step as a program?
I remember the comment, but I less more remember how it came off, but more what the message was. And being elite truly is something that's not easy to do. You know, you're talking about being a top 4 team in the country to get to the playoffs. You're talking about being the last team standing to win a championship. You know, you have to be elite, and little things do matter. And you got to find a way every single day to beat elite teams like Ohio State, like Clemson, like Alabama. You know, you can't say you want to be elite and not be willing to put the work in to do it. You have to come out every single day from January to December with an approach that you're going to be the best you every single day. And, you know, I think our team has responded well since that game. I think we come out the right way this year. We've had a lot of success, and our year isn't done. But I think we are making those steps to become an elite team.
And are you still close with Deion Barnes? You guys still talking?
Yes. I actually was just speaking to him today. Yeah.
What was it about? Can I ask?
Just talking about film, talking about things that I've done this year, things that I haven't done well. I believe in using all resources at my hands. I'll ask a guy on the street, a homeless man, if he played defensive end about a technique. It doesn't matter to me. I love football. I love to learn. So anybody, any tips, any of you guys, it doesn't matter. I'm always open to talk about football. You know, you never can settle for learning. And I just think it's a huge impact on being able to get great is by using the resources at your disposal.
We have heard a lot about your knowledge of football, and I'm assuming your position specifically. With that, could you give us a progress report on a true freshman, Adisa Isaac, a guy that we've seen here and there, but you've seen him every day?
Man, I tell y'all now, Adisa Isaac gonna be a first-round pick. That kid is coachable. Like, I wish I had that level of maturity at his age. It's crazy. He just turned 18. We always tease him, call him Young D's, or just something like a pup, or just something about him being young, because he don't talk much. You know, he's one of those freshmen that he's a dream freshman. Don't get in trouble, ask a lot of questions, but he knows his place. He's just always around. He's a sponge. Like, I did some things like him that the things that he's doing now, I'm doing at this age now, and it's just really impressive. I believe I already told people, you can come out here, and he'll ask me for a pass rush rep, what should I do? I could say dive, do 3 burpees, a jumping jack, club rip, and then spin and get a sack, and he'll do it exactly where I said it. No attitude, comes from a great family home. I know he's going to be special, and y'all can quote me in a few years when he's getting ready to be a top pick in the NFL. He's going to be special, promise you that.
You mentioned you like to get advice from, anywhere you can, you're seeking knowledge. So where is maybe the source of advice that's meant a lot to you that maybe you didn't expect? By that I mean, what's maybe the most unlikely source of the best advice you've received?
You know what? Give me a second to think back to that. You know what? No, I do have an answer. My niece, I remember redshirt year, it's hard redshirting. If a lot of people doesn't know, you could feel separated from the team. you can feel alone. You're not home anymore. You don't want to do school. You just want to go back to being a man in high school. And my niece, she was younger at that time, and one Thanksgiving, I'm finally able to come home. Seen her in a long time, and she seen I was down, and apparently she heard my mom over the phone with my sister, talking about how I was feeling, and she just came and gave me a hug, and she just told me, no matter what you have to do, just get it done, and just know we'll support you. And it was so special to me. And my niece, I treat her like she's my best friend. My sister gets mad at me because the way I talk to her sometimes, because it comes off as like I treat her like a boy. I don't mean to, but that's just the dynamic of our relationship. And and I've just lived with that every single day. You got to give you have to get what you have to get done. You know, sometimes it's gonna be snow outside, and you gotta shovel your car just to get to work. You got to get it done. You know, whatever you have to do, it's doable. Nothing's put on your plate that you can't handle, and I'm a firm believer in that.
Is she like 10 years younger than you? 1 year younger?
Nah, she was probably about 13 something years younger than me at that time. And she's pretty young. She's a lot younger than me. She's older now though, but she was a lot younger then. About 5 years. She'd have been about 5.
Going off of kind of your love of the game, when did that start for you? I mean, were you a little kid who fell in love with it, and how did you fall in love with it?
Second year of Little League football, I fell in love. First year, I hated it. I was that kid. I was smart. I've always understood football, but I didn't always like it. My first year, I just refused to do things the way the coach wanted me to do, because it was I didn't understand why. I was one of those kids that always asked why, and my coach never really explained it to me, but he told me I want you to come back and play again next year. So I came back and played it for the same weight class, and he finally started to teach me and unveil parts of the game to me, and I just been in love ever since. From playing Madden to NCAA to anything that has to do with football, that's what I do. If I open up my phone right now, I'm sitting there listening to sports podcasts, hearing just things talked about around the league. I love football. I could sit all day and just watch football and not even notice. That second year, I started to make plays. I think that's what became more fun for me. But, at a young age, I definitely realized that this game was the one for me.
All right. Oh.
I was just going to ask if that's kind of how you and John Reed started bonding. I mean, obviously both. Well, he's kind of I think you guys declare him a Philly guy, but
no, John's a Philly guy. Yeah. Sorry to the Jersey people. John is definitely claimed by all Philadelphians, especially athletes. Me and John actually bond over video games first, and then football. John, he'll tell you he don't really he likes to watch his football. So Penn State games, things about him, or people that just play corner. Me, I like to watch the entire sport. From the quarterback to the safety to the coach. I like to watch everything. John is real position orientated, but our love of football, our conversations about the IQ level of it, I learned so much from him, from outside of the front seven. I think, learning the back four helps you too. You'll know, all right, well, if it's man to man, this ball might be coming out early because maybe the guy get beat on a slant route. Or if I know my corner got a deep third, and I know that if it's a go route, I know I got a little bit more time. Or the quarterback might hit a 1, 2, 3 go because it's cover 2, and I got to get my hands up. All those things have made me a lot better. So John has really elevated my knowledge of what's going on around me more than what's going on outside the front seven.
All right. Did
you guys build the computer?
Yeah, he put a lot into the computer. I purchased everything for the NCAA. I paid for it my own money, but John is a computer whiz, and he helped me learn. He helped me learn different things that I can put in there, like a coolant, my mouse, I can recalibrate it. John is smart. So he's somebody that you want to have in your corner. Your TV break down, you don't know why. John's somebody that come in, take it off, plug in 3 different things, the next you know your TV's fine again. So that's my guy.
Thanks, Shaka. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for tolerating us.